Hey everyone, it's Erin with Counter Read, joined by Brandon, also of Counter Read. And while I am at home in Nebraska, Brandon is in Champaign. He has the nice brick wall of the stadium behind him. Brandon, how are you?
There we go. Sorry. Yes, I'm in the top row of the lower deck of the stadium. Wi-Fi is okay. You may hear stadium sounds. Sorry for the shaky hand cam, but here we are. Nebraska moved to 500 with a win over Illinois. So let's talk about it.
Yes, it kind of felt like the general feedback that I'm seeing from most people, at least online right now, especially just from, the chat we had for paid subscribers at Counter Read, is that yes, a win is a win. But there's a lot that needs to be cleaned up. I was actually kind of surprised by Matt Rule post game saying, it's not a discipline thing. It's not this. He's talking about mostly being offsides on defense, but I do still think there's a lot that needs to be worked out for this team as far as discipline and consistency and a lot of those just little details. And so I know like he said, he's always going to defend his players and his team. So he's going to give the boilerplate coach speak, if you will, and to a certain degree. But yeah, I think, a win is a win, but there's going to be, I guess, didn't look, you wouldn't have seen it, Brandon, but he didn't look super happy on camera when they saw him walking off the field. I feel like it encompassed probably how a lot of people felt about this game.
Yeah, so I came down to the field with about 5 minutes left, and I just glanced at the final stats and ended up pretty much even in terms of yards play. Neither team was really that good on third down. Nebraska ended up with 2 turnovers. So it was a strange one, but it needed one, and Rule talked about it post game about how happy he was. He didn't say they needed it, but I think we all kind of think that they do needed to have like some success, no matter how it looked. And they got that tonight. They get to go into a bye week, and Rule doesn't want to look ahead, but I think we all will and do that over the next week. Nebraska has a stretch coming up that it's going to be full of probably games a lot like this. Can they keep coming out on top? That's going to be the difference.
Yeah, and this bye week could not come at a better time because this is a team that is now looking at some really, really big injury issues with Marcus Washington now, unknown injury with him. Rule did confirm post game that it's a knee. He was in a lot of pain. He was able to walk off the field, but they're going to have an MRI. We'll hear more next week. But these different areas of the offense, especially, just keep getting thinner. And there's not a lot of depth there to back this up. So this actually works well with this question that we got from a Counter Read subscriber. Erin wanted to know, and I say Erin, but it's Aaron, not me, Erin. He wanted to know, these mistakes and inconsistencies. So, like the injury piece of it's one part, but when it comes to the mistakes and inconsistencies that appear to be more mental than physical, is there a quick fix for this? Is there something that Nebraska can do over its bye week to address some of these things sooner and quicker rather than later?
I'm
Million
afraid the
dollar
answer to that
question.
is probably no. And I think Rule has been intimating that. And I think he did that again tonight, talking about, well, he referenced a kind of well known Pat Riley quote about the innocent climb. How there aren't a ton of expectations for Nebraska. I mean, there's always expectations for a Nebraska football team, but people who have followed this team over the past decade or so, at least, know kind of where they're at. And I think Rules have been effectively saying, kind of week after week in slightly different ways, without saying it directly, like it's just going to take time. And that's tough. You wait, basically 9 months for football season and to realize that, well, one season is just going to be all about the journey and not the destination. It's hard, particularly when you've had a bunch of seasons. Well, you haven't had a winning season since 2016, but I think that's where they're at. For Rule, it really is. Are we better today than we were yesterday? They were better in this game than they were against Michigan. Drastically different team strength, of course. And I think that's the way Rule's going to measure it. It's harder for fans to do it that way, but I think that's really what the season is kind of about.
Yeah, and the other question that we received from Eric really fits with this as well, where, I'm going to read the second half of what he said before I get to the first half, but he said, this team is just like a triage unit of injuries at this point, and that he has no idea how someone coaches through both sets of these challenges. The first challenge was like the self-destruction piece that we've been talking about. And, another thing that Rule said post game that I think, I mean, we're not in the day to day, we're not in the locker room, we're not on the practice field. But he kept talking about how these are players that are worried about what other people have to say about them. So even arguably, this video right now, they're hearing and absorbing everything, and he wants them to stop caring what other people have to say. And so I think with this self destruction piece of it, that's really what at least he is saying, is that he feels this needs to be a team that just stops caring. And that is interesting to me, because in the day and age that we live in now, where there's so much, and yeah, we're making a video right now that does contribute to the noise that somebody can hear, but that's a really interesting thing for him to say. They've got to learn to just block that out. And to what Eric was asking, my opinion is, when it comes to the self-destruction, I think a little bit of it is getting out of your own head and getting out of your own way. But like, if we had the answers right now, like, we would be telling Matt Rule and he'd be paying big dollars for a consultant to give him all the answers. These are easier problems to bring up than they are to solve. And I think that's something that has been plaguing Nebraska for a while now, is the mental piece of the game where they almost just can't get out of their own way. I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that might just be a piece that's going to be different for Rule. And I think that, the challenge is still the same. You do want to get your team to the point where, like, what happens in the locker room is the most important thing. Nebraska's unique in that regard. It's definitely different than Temple. And I'm guessing it was probably different than Baylor. Certainly that first year. Baylor went 1-11. By the time they were 1-8, 1-9, and given like everything it took to get that program to where Matt Rule was the new head coach, like, I don't remember like how many Baylor fans were still like deeply, deeply invested in that season. And Nebraska, we've seen it past 5-6 years. Nebraska be 3-8 going into that Iowa game. Didn't mean that fewer Husker fans than normal would have gone to that Iowa game. They still go, and there's still interest, and we're still doing videos, and every morsel of practice and every morsel of information is covered. So that's going to be a big piece of, I think, long term, getting Nebraska back to that. Can Rule get the same sort of like, hey, just don't worry about it? Like, it's kind of funny to hear him say it each week, where he's just like, talking about, I think it was Emmett coming off the field after his fumble, and Matt Rule's like, nah, nobody cares, don't worry. When in reality, like, everybody cares, and Nebraska had that game pretty like well in hand, by Nebraska's recent standards at least. And Matt Rule's like, nobody cares. And he has to say that sort of stuff. So it's just a kind of an interesting psychological challenge. And I think that remains the biggest one. Like, the injuries, they're not having good injury luck this year. And that's just going to happen sometimes. Sometimes you get the good end of it, sometimes you get the bad end of it. But I still think the major hurdle here to overcome is just changing a mindset that's been around for a while through multiple coaching staffs.
Yeah, and we can dive into this in another. We are thinking about, so if you're watching this video, we are thinking about adding a midweek video to kind of talk about leading into the game versus just post game. So if you're interested in that, let us know in the comments, because we can dive into some of these things, more specifically in a video like that. Because I've had a number of people, not to bring up a former coach, but I've had a number of people who ask about, well, when, Scott Frost was at UCF, how was he able to do what he did there and then not have that replicated at Nebraska? Or now in the case of Rule, people are like, well, he had tough first years at Temple and at Baylor. So does that mean inevitably this second season at Nebraska will follow the same trajectory? And the answer is that all situations are very different. And again, the fact that Nebraska has not had a winning season since 2016 does play a big part in it, because even when you get players out of the transfer portal who've played for programs that they have seen success in, they're still coming somewhere where as a collective group, they haven't had that success together. And I know that, like, the mental piece of it, some people roll their eyes in and go, like, if you can just just be the strongest team on the field, you should win. And like, yeah, to a degree, in theory, that would be great if you weren't also dealing with the number of injuries you are. They are not strong in certain positions. We talked about they did not go into the transfer portal and really look for playmakers in the receiver room. They're working with what they've got. So every single time somebody gets injured or something happens, it's just chipping away at an already pretty beat up group. And so then, yeah, you have to really sit and look at the mental piece of it and think of all of the things that are weighing on them. So again, we can dive into that in a more specific video, but it is a factor to really consider. And I think it's something that Rule is trying to go back to what Erin was talking about, where he's like, is there a quick fix? In a perfect world, Rule would love to be able to just flip a switch and tell them, stop caring what other people think and just play ball and just go out there and play what you know, and win or lose, just have fun and do what you know how to do. But unfortunately, if it was that simple, every team in the country would just say it and everything would be fixed. So I think a win is a win. Nebraska's 3-3. It gets Nebraska a lot closer to a potential bowl game. It would have been a lot harder if Nebraska had lost to Illinois. But I can understand why I see some fans that are not exactly like celebrating as much as they probably would. I know some people who are like, I'm going to bed, I'm too freaked out, like this thing is this is going the wrong direction, and I get that. So I think every feeling right now about the outcome of this game is valid wherever you land on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a weighty topic. Maybe it's a good one for the bye week for that reason. Like in some ways, I think Nebraska football's greatest strength, which I've always felt, is the fan support, the loyalty of people. In some cases, also might be its highest hurdle in terms of trying to steer out of what Nebraska is trying to steer out of, which is, a level of success that hasn't matched what Nebraska's had historically. So I don't know. The mention of Scott Frost and being able to do it at UCF just kind of made me think along those lines. Working theory for now. Let me think about it.
Working theory. Well, we know it's late, so we are not going to take a ton of your time right now. But like I said, we're thinking about coming back with a second video, especially during the bye week, to kind of go over everything. So if you have questions, comments, whatever that you'd like us to address more, please leave them in the comments. We really appreciated just the conversation that all of you have started. It's been nice to see some of you find our channel and find our videos. So thank you. Even when you don't agree, it's okay. Like it is okay not to always agree on everything. But Brandon, I will let you, I know it's probably like very cold there right now and you were outside. Like we should let you get inside.
It did get pretty chilly. But we'll be okay. Heading into the bye week with Nebraska having done what it needed to do.
Well, if I remember correctly, Illinois hands out beer following the game to its media. So be sure to check that out. For everyone else, we can have a conversation about what media gets at opposing teams at some point in the future. It's always very entertaining. But thank you, Brandon. I hope you enjoyed being in Champaign. Again, everybody, thank you for watching. Keep commenting, sharing, subscribing to this channel. Also, head to counterread.com. We have some really exciting stuff coming this week, including a conversation that will parlay into a lot of different things with Trev Albert. So please go subscribe to Counterread at counterread.com. Subscribe to this channel. All right, Brandon, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.